Hi, I'm Mitch Shoemaker, and today is day 9 of my doing 100 days of YouTube videos and focusing on my writing. So, yay for day 9, I think. um, Today is not exactly how I thought today was going to go, to be perfectly honest. At some point tonight, I just felt like I'm just giving up, I'm done, I'm not going to do this. I don't have any explanation, it's not working, I'm not going to do this. That's not true. I am going to do it, obviously, because I'm doing this video, but I was feeling very much like that. I was very much so struggling to work on my chapter 9 for my book. I did reread some old stuff that I wrote for The Fall of Espinglandia, and I did find the stuff I was looking for chapter 8, but I already rewrote chapter 8, so it doesn't matter. And then I thought, well, maybe I could put this in there, and I looked at my chapter and I was like, no, I like the new one better. The old stuff it doesn't matter. I found it, but it doesn't fit, which I kind of said yesterday it probably wouldn't, and I was right, so that's kind of cool. I did find and copy paste some things that I want to put in chapter 9. I just didn't go through and figure out chapter 9. And every time I try to do that, I just found something else to do instead. I don't know why. Playing games, scrolling through Facebook, beta reading my friend's stuff. Her book is getting more interesting. I think books do that. They start out little, you have to get all the details, information, whatever. And she has a good book. She just puts a lot of details, and sometimes her details distract from the story. And I'm like, I just want the story. I just want the story. I think I'm like what my mentor says, like the fast food reader. Because I used to read all the books that had all the details in them, and that's what I grew up with, and that's what I started writing. And now that I'm doing the fast food writing version, just jump into the story, it's like I just want to jump into the story when I read other people's stories. So I'm not trying to say her book is bad or comparing. It's just it's different. It's interesting. It's good to read somebody else's stuff. Give me ideas for my own stuff, because I know my stuff's not perfect, and I can learn from other people. So I was doing that. I did come up with a different blurb for the back of the book for The Fall of Espinglandia. I just like to take stuff out of the book somewhere that just kind of jumps out, like this is kind of intense, but it kind of somehow summarizes the book too. So I just pulled something out of, I think it was chapter 8. It was chapter 7, I think. I really liked it, and I was like, I'm going to just use this for the blurb for the back of my book. I don't know if it's going to end up being the blurb for the back of my book or not, but I thought it was really cool. So I'd read it to you, except that it's on my laptop. Let's put it away. But I just never got through chapter 8, and I did chapter 8. Couldn't get myself to write chapter 9 tonight. And I was very frustrated with the fact that I could not do that. And I kept thinking it's very simple. I could play it out in my mind, how it was going to work. I had the stuff there, and I just, for those days where I'm just staring at it, I'm like, I just can't do this. Anything but this. Anything but this. I even thought about going through and revising stuff in Lanoia and the Teachers of Powers. And I'm like, I'm just going to start doing revisions on my other stuff, because I'm not going to do this chapter 9. And then I was really grateful that I decided to write in my journal, because I'm stayed up later than I wanted to, been falling asleep for a while, but I was like, okay, I can't go to bed until I do my stuff, which I'm grateful for, because I've set that as my goal, as my motivation. I did this for my gratitude. I'm going to do it for my writing. So I'm not letting myself sleep until I'm done. And I'm like, all right, I need to be done so I can go to sleep. So I'm like, all right, that's as good as it's going to get for my chapter 9 today. So I'm going to write in my journal so I can go to bed. So I wrote in my journal. And when I was writing in my journal, I kind of had the insight as to why I was struggling with chapter 9. And it was emotional insight. We'll just put it that way. I know that my writing, the characters in my books have, some of them I think are imaginary versions of myself. Those are future books, not necessarily this particular books that I'm writing, which is why I haven't finished The Wise One, because that particular character is based off of myself. I don't know, my thoughts, my feelings, how I would react and respond to something, and this is how that character does, or ways that I wish that I would respond and act to things, and that character gets to do what I didn't have the courage to do, which is why I don't have the courage to write that book or finish that book. But this book, The Fall of Espinglandia, I've already written, so I thought it was going to be easier and not as emotional. I didn't realize it was going to bring up stuff. And the crazy part, I wish I had an explanation for this. I think my counselor mentioned this to me years ago, but it's one of those things where a lot of people say, the thought comes first and then you have the feeling or the emotion. But sometimes I think when there's been a lot of trauma or other things, it's like the emotion comes up first. And then you have to figure out, well, where's that emotion coming from? Why am I feeling this way? What am I being blocked by? And then I have to go back through and figure out what the underlying thought or reaction or trauma or whatever is, because the thought comes first. And in my case tonight, it was just like I could not seem to get myself to write that particular chapter. Like I could think of other chapters. I could think of what I wanted to do for later in the book. But I was like, I wanted to write chapter 9, and I specifically wrote that on my to-do list today, like chapter 9. I'm like, what is so important about chapter 9? And then I'm writing in my journal, and I'm like, holy crap, I did not see that coming. Like, at all. I thought I dealt with whatever stuff that book symbolized, which when I first wrote it, I thought I was just doing the backstory, setting the stage for the Wise One series that I will be writing. And I did that because I wasn't comfortable being vulnerable enough to share the Wise One story, even though it's not really my life story. It's just a character that I kind of based off of my own personality, off of me, off of used analogies to kind of things that happen in my life, trying to think of I don't know, I can't think, my brain, like, they're analogies, they're similar, they're not similes. See, I'm really bad at English. I don't know why I'm a writer, but I'm really bad at English because I can't think of the terminologies for these things that I'm doing. I'm like, I come up with them all the time and I can't think of my little analogies. And anyway, it's a representation of things that happen in my life on a different scale. Just different traumatic events that I can put into the book in a different form that happen to the character that gets to react or respond in a different way, that I get to express emotions or feelings that I didn't feel like I got to express, or just memories of how I think I felt, but I'm not sure if I actually did at the time because I don't really remember. I remember the event, and therefore I'm like trying to piece things together, and I do it in my story version. And I see how it builds my character, the character in the book's character, and then it kind of reflects, and I can see how it built my character or made me who I am. And so sharing that, especially, 5-6 years ago when I was writing this book, or 10 years ago when I was writing this book, I have stuff from 2008, 2013 with this book. I was not in a place where I was ready to share that with the Wise One. So I'm glad I put that one off until later, which is the whole reason I wrote The Fall of Espanglanja. And when I finished that book, even though it's not publishable or not something that people can read because it's not written to the reader, it's just written for me, I saw a similarity to my life, to like an event. Like the whole book was a representation of something that happened in my life. And I thought that was the only representation in this book. And when I was writing in my journal tonight, I realized that what I'm making one of the characters do, and he has to do it. It's part of the story. It's how the story goes. I'm not changing the storyline. It's what happens. But I felt myself in that story, in the actions that he was doing. It triggered emotions for myself. And I'm wishing that 2 nights ago when I found the stuff for chapter 9, I would have just written chapter 9 and gone back to chapter 8, because then chapter 9 would have been written. But maybe it's better I waited, because even though I still haven't finished chapter 9, it allowed me to see some personal things that I needed to process, things that I need to forgive myself for, things that I need to be compassionate to myself for. And things that I know I needed to do to take care of myself. But in the process of doing that, I kind of left other people in the lurch. And it wasn't my intent. I didn't see it that as leaving them in the lurch. I thought that they were okay the way that they were, and that they would be fine without me. And years later, I learned that they were not as fine as I thought they were. They were very upset about the way that I left things or the way that I did things. And I can see that with this character leaving, because the character feels like that's the best thing for him to do. And he's, thinks everything's going to be okay. And in reality, he's leaving everybody in a lurch. And so it kind of triggered this similarity in my own life, which I didn't realize it was doing. And so it wasn't until I wrote in my journal, which is why I'm really grateful I'm writing in my journal. Because as I've said before, my journal is my outlet. My journal is my process. I think my journal sometimes is how just God speaks to me, points things out to me. It's how I go from, I'm frustrated with this, I'm having a bad day, I give up, I quit, I don't get this. And I'm like, I can't do this. I was writing this, and this is the problem, and this is the problem. And oh my gosh, this is the problem. This is how I'm feeling. This is why I'm feeling this way. This is the connection between what's happened in my life and what's going on in my story. And it's like, oh, and even though I'm past that part of my life, I still have feelings about that, I guess, that maybe I haven't fully worked through or processed, or I just don't want to dredge up again. I don't want to deal with again. And I knew when I started this process for writing, when I chose to do 100 days for writing, it was going to bring up a lot of emotional things. And I don't like dealing with emotions. I don't like crying. I don't like facing emotions. Spent my entire life avoiding feelings. So feelings are not my friends. Feelings are a part of life. Feelings are not facts. But I always felt like I was feeling the wrong things, or I always felt like I should feel a certain way and I didn't, so there was something wrong with me, or I felt bad about a situation or didn't like something, but everyone else was okay with it, so there must be something wrong with me because I wasn't comfortable with that situation. So I always based, how everyone else was feeling, and if everyone else was okay with it, it didn't matter how I felt, it should be okay. So I would stay in uncomfortable situations. I would do things, and I didn't do bad, horrible things. I just was uncomfortable, or I let other people do things that made me uncomfortable because it didn't make them uncomfortable. And I just thought, okay, if I just stick it out for a little bit, then they'll go away, then it'll be over soon, and then they'll just leave. Because trying to stand up for myself had never worked. Like, I just, I was a kid and I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't stand up for myself when I was told that I was wrong. So or that, it was okay because, someone else had to do it for me because I'm a girl and I can't do things for myself because I'm a girl. That was my biological dad. That was his answer to every bad, horrible thing that he did, that it was okay because I was a kid, I was a girl, and I couldn't do it because, he had to do it for me because I was a girl. And that was wrong. Totally wrong. Horrible justification. None of those things were right. Anyway. It's taken me a lifetime to figure that out. It's taken me a lifetime to start recognizing my own feelings and to start trusting myself and my feelings. And I think a lot of my trust issues stem from the fact that I didn't listen to myself. I didn't believe myself. I believed other people. So I thought that I was wrong and that I would get hurt or taken advantage of because I trusted other people to put me first, and they never did. But I put everyone else first. And now I'm learning to put myself first. But I'm also learning to see that stuff that I did in an attempt to put myself first, or an attempt to change, or an attempt to escape what I felt like was a bad situation, left other people in the lurch. It hurt other people as a side effect. And that was never my intention. I didn't even realize that I was doing that. I just didn't know how to communicate. And every time I communicated I wanted to do something that other people weren't okay with, they would always talk me out of it. So I got to where I just wouldn't communicate and I would just do. I would just kind of secretly come up with the idea and I'm like, okay, this is what I know I'm supposed to do. I would make all the plans and then it would be like, surprise, I'm doing this thing. I did that with my grandma. I'm like, surprise, I bought a house. And she was like, oh. And she was like, I'm not mad that you bought a house. I just wish you would have waited until you graduated from school. And I only had like 1 year left to go. But I was like, I felt like I needed to buy a house. And I could have talked to her about the process because I was living with her at the time. But I did the same thing when I moved in with my grandma. I kind of made all of the arrangements, called my grandma, said, can I come live with you? And then I, transferred. I actually think I got the job transfer from where I was working to the state where my grandma was at. And then I called my grandma to see if I could come live with her. And then I told my family that I was moving. And yeah. So I'm not sure if I did it exactly like that, but I think that's kind of how I did it. Because anytime I said I was going to do something else, like when I was going to drop out of school to be a nanny, and I told everybody, and my biological mother freaked out, and then she was calling my grandma, who was freaking out, and then everybody was just freaking out on me, like, you can't quit school, you can't. I was like, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to keep going to school for nothing. And I changed my mind. I don't want to be a school teacher. I don't know what I want to do. Oddly enough, both of my sisters have become school teachers, and I did not. Hilarious, right? And that's what I was going to go to school for. And I didn't go to school for that either, but that's what they became. And I still haven't figured out what I want to become. Actually, I think I want to become a writer and possibly a motivational speaker with doing these YouTube videos. Not really comfortable with the whole motivational speaking thing, but for some reason people seem to get stuff when I speak, when I share at like 12-step meetings, or I give talks at church, or even, these videos. It's like, I know it's God that's speaking through me, that's delivering this message, and it reaches other people because I can be open, because I can be honest, because I'm like, this is what I'm going through. This is my life, and I'm crazy and insane. But I know that it's okay, because I'm learning to trust God, and now I'm learning to trust myself. And because I've learned that other people are struggling with the same things that I'm struggling with. And so sometimes it just helps to know that you're not alone. So I'm grateful that I can put this out there for people that, are struggling with the same things, or they're struggling with their own writing, because it reflects themselves. And sometimes it's hard to just look in the mirror and see a reflection of yourself. And it's not always nice. It's not always pretty. Or it just brings up memories of things that were painful, and it's like, okay, and you have to cry. And my mentor said, it's like, of course you have to cry when your characters cry. You have to bring those emotions, because then you put the emotions into the story when you do that. And I'm like, yay, but now I have to feel those emotions to write my story, and I'm not comfortable with that. But I'm going to learn how to be comfortable with that, because I have committed to writing for the next 100 days, and because I know I will feel better by getting these emotions out, by processing them, by learning to be forgiving and gentle to myself, by making amends, reaching out to people that I may have inadvertently hurt by doing things. Or, just, I have acknowledged, I have talked to people about this in the past. Maybe there's other people that I still need to reach out and talk to about it. But I think it's just more that it's just bringing up more memories, and I've already got enough. I feel like I've got all these other things that keep coming up that I have to deal with in general, that I'm like, I don't want something else. It's some other random thing. And my old default setting, my response is to avoid it. It really is. And so I spent my night avoiding writing my chapter 9. And I wish that I hadn't. I wish that I'd written in my journal sooner to figure out why I was avoiding my chapter 9. Because now I'm like, okay, now I can sit down and write chapter 9. I think I can sit down and write chapter 9, except that it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm tired and I just want to go to bed. And I'm so grateful I don't have to get up early to do anything tomorrow. And I just don't care. I'm going to sleep in. So like, it's okay that I'm up late. But I could have spent a lot more time writing. I could have maybe done more than just one chapter tonight. And now I'm beating myself up because I didn't do that. And I know that's not going to solve anything. And it's not going to make me a better writer or a better person. So I just need to remember that, yes, I am still learning how to face myself and how to face my emotions. And that my books are mirrors to my life, to my history, to my emotional things. And it's not even stuff that I realize when I'm writing that. It's like, I don't realize that that's what I'm doing when I'm writing it. In some cases, some stories, I'm totally aware of that. But in other cases, it's kind of like going back and rewriting like this book and then struggling to figure out why I can't write it until I write in my journal. And I'm like, oh, that brought up something I was not expecting at all. So that's interesting. But now at least I know what is blocking me, and I'm grateful that God is showing me what's blocking me. And by seeing the block, by seeing that I'm standing in my way again, it helps me to know that I can move forward, that I can move past that I can feel those emotions when I'm writing the story and know that it's okay, because I can change my behavior in the future when I make decisions to do stuff. I don't have to keep it a secret. I don't have to make it all by myself and not tell anybody until everything's fallen into place. because I seem to do one of two things where I tell everybody and then I change my mind because either people are all excited for me or they get all discouraged and like, or they, give me all the reasons why I can't. And even as an adult, I tell people and people get all excited for me, like with my books and my writing and even my gratitude videos and things like that. I usually I'm the one that has the voices in my head from childhood that say, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't finish this, or it's not going to happen. So I did finish my 100 days of gratitude, and I went out with some friends and celebrated today, and it was really nice. Went somewhere I hadn't been before. It was really great, and I was like, okay, I can do this. And then, of course, my lovely mantra that I just kind of don't like or mock or whatever, that I'm capable of more than I give myself credit for, because it means that I can do all of this stuff, that I can get through this, that I have no excuses. It pretty much wipes out all of my excuses and my reasons for not doing things, which I don't like, because my excuses are my wall. But they're also, they block me. They keep me from doing things. I put up the wall to protect myself, but at the same time, they get in the way of my succeeding and moving on with my life. So they're not really protecting me as much as they're hurting me, but they're my defense mechanism. That's what my excuses are. That's what my avoidance is. It's my defense mechanism, to avoid feeling pain, to avoid dealing with emotions, to avoid seeing the mirror of my life in my stories. But oddly enough, today when I was reading through some of the old stuff that I wrote, I actually wrote that in my book, and I sat there and laughed. Like, I just thought it was hilarious that I have no idea, like 10 years ago, I wrote, one of my characters was telling the other characters in the book that they're capable of more than they give themselves credit for. And that's literally how I wrote it in my book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wrote that. Like, over 10 years ago, I wrote that. And now it's coming back to me as like, I need to tell myself this. And it's something my character was telling other people in the book. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wrote that. So I'm sure it was inspired, but it was hilarious to me, because I just feel like that was something brand new this year, doing my gratitude list, and wishing that God would stop reminding me of that, because it means I have to do more. It breaks down my wall, it breaks down my barriers, it takes away my excuses. It means that I have to face myself in my life, because I can do this and I don't have an excuse. And then it means that it's my choice to be miserable. It's my choice to not succeed. I'm the one that's standing in my way, and I need to just stop standing in my way. So it was just hilarious to me that I wrote it like over 10 years ago. It's in my book. I don't know if it's going to end up staying in my book. I don't even know if I'm going to put that in my book. I think it's like too much information in there for the story. But it seemed like it was important at the time that I wrote it. But I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that to myself. And now I'm like repeating it. See, this is the whole thing I said. I'm like, I honestly don't remember what I write. So here I am here I am with this mantra that I'm like, oh, God is putting this in me, like whatever. And I was like, and he gave it to me like over 10 years ago when I wrote my book. That's hilarious. And it may have only been like 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know. But I'm like, it's in my book. It's hilarious to me. Maybe you don't find that as humorous as I do, but I'm grateful I could just laugh at the irony of that I wrote something and I forgot about it, and now it's something that's like plaguing me. And yes, I'm saying plaguing me because I don't like it. I don't like having my walls torn down. I don't like having my excuses disappearing. I know it's good for me. I know it's healthy for me. I know that's what I'm striving to do. Um, because I know it's what's keeping me from succeeding. I'm the one that's standing in my way. I'm the one that's letting those old thoughts, those old habits, those old things control me. And I am to the point where I know I have the choice. And, my life is going to stay the way that it is unless I make those changes. And I want to make those changes. And today I hit that wall and I just could not get to chapter 9. And then I wrote in my journal and I was like, this is why I can't get through chapter 9. This is bringing up all this other stuff that I have to feel, that I have to deal with, that I have to process. And it's not hard stuff to process. It's just it was more just the realization, the connection with myself and my character that I didn't realize that I had, because I didn't see that character as portrayal of myself. I mean, I'm writing from that character's point of view, but I also think that's different in this version of the book, because before I kind of wrote from every single character's point of view. So every time something happened, every time a new character was introduced, the point of view changed. So I wasn't overly attached to any one particular character, and it was more the plot of the story. What happened in the story, it was more about that than it was about the individual characters. I didn't have to get attached to any particular character in my story. And I wasn't, excuse me, I wasn't attached to the characters in my story. They were just they were just in the plot to tell the story. I think I kind of was trying to write it like a TV show, like a script or something. I don't really know how to write a script, so I can't really say that. But I was picturing it like a movie in my head, and each character, when they're talking, each, person on the TV screen, you've got like 4 to 6 main characters. You could have more characters than that just keep randomly coming in and out. You've got the main ones, and then you've got the other ones. But it's like you get to know them because their personalities are on the screen, because the faces they make and the responses. And every time that person's talking in the movie or on the screen, you can see you don't hear their internal thoughts, but I mean, occasionally they will say them over whatever everything else is going for some TVs and movies, but anyway, but not always. So you don't necessarily hear their internal thoughts, but you see their facial features, their expressions, you see the actions that they're taking. So I'm like describing the actions and things, and so from each character's point of view, because like if you picture it in a movie, that's how you would picture it. So that's how I wrote my first book. But I didn't have to get overly attached to the characters, because I didn't have to feel them for the entire chapter. It wasn't just from one person's point of view for the whole scene, like in a movie. It's like all these other people are here, so you kind of see their facial expressions, you see their interactions, you kind of get the gist of each person's personality, point of view, kind of a thing, from multiple points of views. But but you can see it, so you can process that. When you're writing it, you can't really do it that way. It has to be one person's point of view to connect all of it together. Kind of like the Hunger Games. I read those books, and I'd watched the movies. And I have to say, I watched the movies before I read the books, and it wasn't until the third one, when they split it, that I didn't want to wait for the final outcome, that I went and got the books from the library so I could figure out how the book ended. And I was thoroughly surprised that it was completely from Katniss's point of view. And I was like, and a lot of the stuff they put in the movie, like she wasn't even in some of the scenes in the movie, and I was like, how did they... Wow, like I was impressed, because they had to put everybody else's point of view in the movie, but it's not in the book at all. Like everything completely Katniss's point of view. And I'm not talented enough to quite write a book like that, I don't think. Not like that, not the way that author did. That was amazing. Because it really was like her thoughts, getting out of bed, everything she did. And I'm like, I don't do that. I still do a little too much narrative or conversation with other people, and not just like whole chapters from one person's thoughts or something and what they're seeing around them. I may never be that talented to do that kind of writing, but I was very impressed. So I think for me right now it's different, because now I've picked 3 characters in this book, and I'm focusing on them and their thoughts and their feelings, and that's triggering other feelings for myself that I didn't realize were bringing up, because I didn't have to get that emotionally involved in my characters in this book before. And I didn't realize that I was getting that emotionally involved in my characters in my book. But I mean, I think that's a good thing, because to get emotionally involved, and then you write them emotionally, and you feel their emotions when you're going through it. But again, I don't like feeling emotions. I don't like dealing with emotions, and it's kind of an intense scene that I'm writing, and it's also a character that has the potential of being something more, something better. Trying not to do spoiler alerts here, but the character has the potential of being something more, something better, and everyone else is seeing that potential in this character. But this character has seen a future that he doesn't like, and he's afraid. And so he relinquishes or gives up his potential. He lets go of that potential and basically runs away from from his responsibilities because he doesn't think it can be that bad if he's not the one that takes responsibility. He thinks someone else will step in and that everything will be okay, and it's just safer. He took the safer route to protect himself instead of being there for other people. And I don't know that I've ever really lived up to my potential. I've gotten close to doing things and I always quit. I always give in. I always decide that I'm too bored or I'm not good enough, or sometimes I feel like I'm like the jack of all trades, or I'm mediocre at just about everything. I can do a little bit of everything, but I'm not the best at anything. That's kind of how I like describe myself. I'm like, I can do just about anything. I just can't do it really well. And there's always someone that can do it better. So if someone else is the expert, go for it. And I'm like, I know I'm capable of learning how to do stuff, but I'm like, if I don't have to, I won't. I just don't. And now I've kind of put myself in a situation where I'm like, I have to learn how to write my books, how to publish my books. I have to learn how to market my books. So I'm trying to do it like 100 days at a time, which is cool. Learn how to do some gratitude, build some confidence. And now I'm doing my writing, which means I have to learn how to feel my emotions. And I don't like feeling my emotions. I don't like expressing them and crying and getting upset, especially in my little videos here. And even though I do share some personal things, I don't necessarily want to share names or like the complete details of stuff. I prefer the analogies. I'm very good at analogies. But I'm seeing myself mirrored in my character, and I didn't realize that that was why I was struggling to write my chapter until I wrote in my journal, which makes me very grateful that I'm choosing to write in my journal during this process, because writing in my journal is going to help me. And maybe that's part of the reason I put writing off until the end of my day instead of doing it before I go to work, which would be better, because I'm putting off facing my emotions. I'm putting off dealing with my feelings because I have to feel the characters. I have to feel what they're feeling to write them. And bringing up those feelings brings up feelings in myself, not just for the character, but for me. And it triggers those feelings, which trigger emotions and memories and other things for me to deal with. And so it kind of has that correlation to my book, to my characters. And it's like, oh, dang it. It's like when you grieve and something, you lose a loved one and you've lost a loved one in the past. So it's like that grief brings up every memory of every other person you've lost. So it's kind of like it's a cumulative thing. And you're like, it shouldn't be. But in my case, it really is, because if I don't grieve the stuff before, I don't let go or process the previous grief, it just kind of combines with the new stuff. So the new stuff brings up all the old stuff. And even though the stuff I'm writing about my characters isn't new stuff, it brings up those emotions, and those emotions bring up everything that I haven't processed with it. So it's going to make my writing experience very, very interesting. And I knew it was going to bring up a lot of stuff when I chose to do my writing, but I knew it was going to be a good thing for me. It was going to be healthy for me to work through all of this stuff. And I thought I was just freaking out because I'm so close to finishing my books, or freaking out because, I was talking to my friend today, and she wanted to read. I asked her if she would be willing to beta read my book, God's Hand in My Life, and she said she would love to. She was waiting for me to ask her, and I was like, you could have just asked. I would have let you read it. You didn't have to wait to be asked. But she's really sweet. I really love my friends. I have good friends, which I'm grateful I have acquired good friends, and I'm grateful that they're very supportive and loving with me through this process of self-discovery, basically. And I think anyone that writes, anyone that's a writer, is going to have a lot of self-discovery, because in order to write your characters, you have to have experienced something, or have to have imagined something, and you have to have felt the feelings that you put in those books. And I don't know how people can write or do that without having felt something, or without having known something. I think, writing things makes you a better writer. And not that I know a fantasy world, but I mean, I created a fantasy world to escape my own world. So it was my expression in my head, and now it's my expression in writing. And now I'm building the confidence to share it with other people, share it in my videos, share it in my writing, and hopefully get my books published. And then you can actually read all the stuff that I'm talking about. And people that know me might be able to figure out the correlation between myself and my characters in my books and my writing. And people that don't won't, or people that know me might be surprised at some of the stuff that my characters do. And they're like, oh, that's what you think in your head, huh? It's like, yeah, there's a lot more in my head than you would imagine. But yeah, it's not always so sweet and innocent as I pretend to be. I'm not mean and horrible either. I hope I'm not mean and horrible. But I know I have my moments. I think everybody does. So I'm grateful that I was able to journal tonight. I'm grateful I was able to still put that positive spin on things. So even though I was feeling depressed, despondent, discouraged today, I was hitting that wall and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I am grateful that I chose to try to do it anyway. I'm grateful that I just said, okay, this is as good as it's going to get for tonight, and I'm going to have to try again tomorrow because I just cannot make myself write my chapter 9. And then I made myself write in my journal, and I'm grateful that God was able to show me why I was hitting a block. And I'm grateful to know that I can have those blocks removed during this process. It's just going to be a difficult process, and I'm grateful to know that I don't have to give up. It doesn't mean that I'm giving up, that I can still work through this, and tomorrow can be a better day. It's not the end of the world just because I wasn't able to do what I thought I was going to be able to do today. And I am grateful that those positive pathways are still kicking in, that determination is still like, okay, I'm not going to give into this entirely. Not that I'm not that I'm letting go entirely, not that my walls are coming crumbling down or crashing down all around me. That would be fantastic. But I think they're just coming off like one little brick at a time. And it's like, hey, we're going to move this brick. So now you can kind of see a little bit more. And then, you get comfortable with that brick being gone. We'll tear down some more bricks. I think it's going to be more like that, because I think if my bricks came crashing down all at once, I would probably just panic from the exposure and I would just scramble to try to put them all back up again. And that would not be good. So, see me and my analogies, my visualization. But I think tonight I was able to knock out a brick, knock down a little piece of that wall. So hopefully tomorrow I can actually get through chapter 9 and figure out what the next chapter in my book is going to be, and how that's going to affect me. And hopefully it will be okay, because I'm trying to approach this book in an analytical way, and because it was supposed to be just setting the stage, telling the background story for my future books that are all the emotional, intense ones. And I was like, dang it, this one's turning into an emotional, intense one too. So it's interesting to see that in myself, and to see that in my writing, and to see that there is more. Obviously, I knew there was going to be more work. I'm only to day 9 and it's already hard. So, but I know I will get through this with God's help, and I am grateful for that. And I am grateful that I am not giving up. And I am grateful that I was able to find a blurb for the back of my book. I'm grateful that I can still find things to be grateful for and still share my gratitude along with my writing, because I need that gratitude. I need that positive pathways, because without that, there's no way that I would be able to get through these walls and these bricks, and I would do what I've done in the past and I would just give up. And then months or years down the road, it would still be taunting me that I need to write, that I have this story in my head, and I would start over until I hit another wall. It makes for a very, very long process. I think it took me like 5 years to write that book, and I started like in 2008, finished in like 2013 or something, and now it's 2020, and I'm rewriting and still haven't published a book. So that's been my process. So it would be nice to see if I could actually, get through the walls, break down enough bricks that I can actually publish something and be like, look, I did this. So, and I think the scarier, the more emotional my books are, or the more vulnerable I am, and that I can survive that vulnerability without feeling like I've had the rug pulled out from underneath me or been crushed or devastated. I think it will help to build trust in myself, as well as in God, and in other people again, and in relationships. and it will help to show myself that I actually can do this, that I really am capable of more than I give myself credit for. I did actually do my 100 days of gratitude. I can actually do 100 days of writing, and then at some point I will actually publish a book, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in, that I know that there's a way up, there's a way out, there is hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is not a train. I say that because my mother growing up used to say that she was a realist, not a pessimist, and that the light at the end of the tunnel was a train. Because of all the stuff that happened in her life and trial, she's like, it's just another train. It's like, no point in getting up, it's just another train gonna come run me over. But the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train. And there is hope. And there is help, and there is healing. And writing is my process for healing, and journaling is my process for understanding myself. So I'm doing a combination with my writing for this next 100 days, and I have no idea how I'm going to change over the next 100 days, but I have a feeling I'm going to be knocking down quite a few bricks in my wall that I put up as my little protectors, my avoidance of my life. Seeing in that mirror and realizing that it's not as scary or as bad as I thought, or that maybe I did some things that I needed to do for me and I thought were best for me that might have kind of, left other people in the lurch. Wasn't the nicest thing to other people. And I can try to make amends, but things will never be the same as it was before. And I have to live with that. But I can, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful to know that I can change and that it will get better. And that maybe it all works out the way that it's supposed to. Because the stories all work out the way they're supposed to. The characters have all these trials and problems they have to go through to build their character, to become the people they're meant to become. And I like seeing that parallel with my own life, that all the things that I've been through, maybe I was supposed to go through, I was supposed to do, even the mistakes that I made, so that I could learn, so that I could grow, so that I can become the person that I'm supposed to become. And now, because I'm doing these videos, I'm in the process of seeing that person that I'm supposed to become. And it's not just like this imaginary person or this envision in my head of like what I want my future self to be. This is me becoming that person. And it's not an easy process, but it's kind of cool to see. It's kind of cool to realize that I can actually be who I've always imagined being. And it doesn't have to be imaginary. It can be real. I can be real. And that's kind of cool and scary all at the same time. Change is not easy, but it can be exciting. It can be scary. It can be very scary. But it's very doable, and I'm grateful to know that it's doable. I'm grateful that with God's help I can do this, and I'm grateful for the people that are watching and supporting me through this process. And I am grateful for the things that I'm learning. And I know this is more of a grateful video than a writing video, but I'm also very grateful for my writing, because if I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't be learning and growing, and I'm grateful to be learning and growing. It's all part of the process, and sometimes I hate this process, but today I'm grateful, because even though I struggled today, I'm grateful that I could have that positive thinking and kind of be like, all right, I can start over tomorrow. At least now I understand why I struggled. And maybe in the future I'll get out my journal sooner and just be like, all right, I can't figure out why I can't write. I'm just going to journal about it, or I'm just going to start typing up something and all the reasons why I don't want to do that. I've done that before, where I just started writing all the reasons why I don't want to write. And the next thing you know, I was writing. So I just need to remember to start. And once I get started, I can get going. But tonight I tried to start and it just didn't work. So I journaled and then it worked, except I'm not going to go back and write my chapter tonight, so hopefully I can write it tomorrow. Anyway, I hope these videos are helpful. I hope you're enjoying them. And if you hit like, subscribe, share with someone if you think they'd enjoy it or can learn from it as well. And hope you have a great day full of gratitude.